What's going on YouTube? Calyrex here, back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be going over the Utrecht special event results in its entirety with a little bit more focus on the day 2 data. If you looked at our previous video, that was looking at the day 1 teams and the cores and the usage rates, of course, just like what we always do in our tournament recaps, but this one is going to be looking at where some of those day 2 squads ended up finishing, right? And it was a big weekend for Pokemon in general. There was also Melbourne Regionals happening at the same time, and Labmouse also has the results for that as well. And then I'm still waiting for Santiago at the same time. So 3 big regulationI events were happening, which is good, right? Because now we get a lot of data, we get more development in the meta, and we get to really paint this picture of where we are right now in this dual restricted format here. So in case you missed the stream, you can always watch it on the VODs, you know, from the official channel. But just in case you missed it, it was Michael Kels coming out on top with a Koraidon Calyrex Ice Rider core with Leech Seed on the Calyrex Ice Rider, which we saw in Milwaukee. So we're gonna look a little bit more at that and why that is a rising little tech move on the Calyrex. But as always, we're gonna look at the day 2 usage rates just to see what was trending in the right direction, what was on the downtrend, and let's see if we can really make some sense out of that usage data, because again, the things went up and down for a reason, but we always take it with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, you still have to look at the teams and where they finished, and also analyze why and what kind of matchups they were going through. Okay, so as always, let's start with the usage data. Okay, so as far as like the restricted pair usage, this is day 1 data. So these were your top 4 restricted pairs in terms of usage rate. Lunala, Koraidon at number 1 there, right? And then after that, Ice Rider Koraidon at number 2, Zamazenta Shadow Rider at 3, and then Lunala Koraidon at 4. So the ghost typing, fighting type restricteds there at 3rd and 4th place. But you know, look how things developed into day 2. So still Koraidon Lunala at number 1, and if anything, that's a higher conversion rate, right? 22.5%. Nice turnout there. And then look who comes in at number 2, and look who flips to number 3 there. So basically, you get a little bit of a reversal from 2nd and 3rd place, right? So Zamazenta Shadow Rider at 14.6% usage, and then Koraidon and Ice Rider at 13.5% usage. However, with the Zam Shadow Rider idea, there was one in top 8, but only one more within top 16. So you know, take note of that. And then this is the duo that I thought would be a little bit higher in EU as opposed to NA. And here we are in the graphic, Calyrex Shadow Rider and Terapagos, the balanced stuff with, you know, the Incineroars, the Urshifus, the Rillabooms, the Amoonguses, the Ogerpons. So no surprise here for this to enter the fray there, right? It's always going to be like that Calm Mind Terapagos partnered with the Shadow Rider that can fulfill that offensive and also supportive role. These are the Encore disabled Calyrex Shadow Riders with, of course, Asha Barrage. So, you know, no surprise to see it here within the graphics. So ideally, number 1 is still the same, whether it's day 1 and day 2. So still Lunala Koraidon, highest usage rate. You know, again, lots of different combinations that you could do there, lots of different ways to build it. White Guard support for Koraidon is strong, right? And some Trick Room partner so far has been looking pretty good, because again, it kind of supports the rest of the team. You know, these Koraidon teams are going to have Iron Hands, and if you can set up Trick Room for your Iron Hands, that's just going to make your team very flexible and much stronger, because Koraidon's like the fast mode of your team, but now you have a pretty bulky, aggressive Trick Room setter, whether it be the Ice Rider or even the Lunala over here. So yeah, and then no surprise that these are the 2 archetypes that are within the best 3 right now. Shadow Rider, Zamazenta, of course, like we mentioned, again, these are always like going to feature like a balance idea, or they're going to have like Tailwind support. You know, either way, they play more or less the same kind of way. And then, well, we already talked about the Pagos Shadow Rider idea, and we're going to look at the teams here in a second. But just in terms of the non-restricteds, so again, this was day 1 here. Look at Grimmsnarl finally cracking the top 6 in a competitive format, 25% usage, strong ideas there. And then, of course, Incin Urshifu at 1 and 2, and then Iron Hands at number 3. Strong Pokemon here. And again, it's not just those Koraidon teams. We have seen some Iron Hands on some of the other balanced teams, especially like Kyogre, Zacian, which we'll get into in a bit. And then you see the Fluttermane Chiyu there, you know, at the bottom half of the top 12 here. Those are going to be very strong on those Koraidon Sun teams, and then you know, Chien-Pao Tornadoes are always going to be featured with Urshifu on some of those hyper offensive yet balanced kind of ideas. And of course, Ferrograph, you know, if you're running Miraidon, there's almost always a Ferrograph partner there, unless you're using a Lunala, right? And then of course Ursaluna, strong right now. Look at that, Ursaluna in the top 6. Ground normal typing, very good right now, because again, the immunity to electric for Miraidon, and being able to do super effective damage into the Iron Hands, the Miraidons, and also some of the fire types in general, right? So, and then when you partner this thing with Lunala, the double Luna combination, Wide Guard plus Earthquake is very, very strong, because you don't take any damage, and then at the same time you get to deal damage too. And the opponent, if they're going for a spread move like a Glacial Lance, they're not taking any damage either. So the Ursaluna is relatively safe in front of the Ice Rider, as long as it has its Lunala partner with it. So now if we take a look into day 2, nice little resurgence there from Rillaboom, going from 21% up to 25% there. So that's pretty good, because again, we did say how like Rillaboom was on a bit of a drop, just because these Miraidon teams that you normally want to bring the Rillaboom against, they have an Ice Rider partner next to it. So if the Ice Rider is there, you almost don't want to bring Rillaboom, because, you know, the ice type damage doesn't look so great. And then at the same time, you know, when they have stuff like, you know, Incineroar, Ferrograph, and Chi-Yu coming out, and it's just not great for the Rillaboom altogether. And then, you know, but now all of a sudden we are able to see a little bit of an increase, and that's usually because of the balanced teams, you know, with the Calyrex Shadow Rider, Ogerpon stuff, or like the Zamazenta Calyrex Shadow Rider teams. They like to use Rillaboom a lot, because again, fake out pressure lets them set up their nasty plots, lets them set up the Calm Minds. So that with Incineroar just gives you a lot of potential just to be able to set up those setup moves, pun intended. But look at the true winner here, right? Look at Grimmsnarl. Okay, now you go from 25 to 30%. Okay, huge increase for, well, huge, pretty good increase for Grimmsnarl here at number 3. Imagine that. Okay, so you know, you'll see like Instant, Grimmsnarl, Urshifu on a lot of those Miraidon teams, especially like those Assault Vest variants that also run Ursaluna. So, you know, screen support really good, mitigating damage from both restricteds that are legal in the format. Okay, and then of course you get speed control with Thunder Wave, you get chance at paralysis hacks. Foul play damage is really good into both Calyrexes, and then even Spirit Break has merit, because again, you get to neutralize a lot of the special attackers like a Miraidon, like a Calyrex Shadow Rider too. Then look at Raging Bolt re-entering the graphic. All of a sudden, nowhere to be found on the graphic, but now is back in the graphic. And these Raging Bolts, not only are they on those Miraidon, Koraidon teams, but they're even more found on those balanced teams with Zamazenta and the Shadow Rider. And we'll show you that in a second. But you know, in certain team comps where you're just struggling to hit the bulky water types. By the way, water type was the #1 Terra on, you know, in this tournament. So if you're struggling with a way to hit those bulky water types, this is where you're going to get some good usage and good mileage out of a Rillaboom, out of an Iron Hands, out of a Raging Bolt there, because you can Thunderclap these Urshifus. You can, you know, deal Thunderbolt damage into Lunalas for that matter, or even Thunderclap it there. And then break its Shadow Shield potentially, and then just knock it out with like a Dark move if you have that option for you, right? No Fluttermane in the day 2 graphic, by the way. So it does drop out here. You still get your Chi-Yu, which is great, because again, Dark Fire typing just like Incineroar, but you have Snarl support, which is really strong tech move right now. But lots of Chi-Yus have Snarl. Anyway, Chien-Pao is still looking pretty good in that slot there. Ferrograph, of course. Your anti-fake out mons, right, and anti-priority, because look how much priority there is here, right? Aqua Jet, Urshifu, fake out Insane, you know, Thunder Wave Grimmsnarl, fake out Grassy Glide Rillaboom, fake out Iron Hands, you know, Prankster Whimsicott, right? So there's lots of priority things going around here, so you don't want to suffer at the hands of that. You Sucker Punch Chien-Pao, right? So Ferrograph looking pretty good. It's probably going to stay there for a bit, depending on where we develop and where we go from here from the meta. But at least right now, it's in a pretty good spot within the top 12 here. Okay, Amoonguss still looking pretty good at where it is, because again, 14% in day 1, getting a nice little jump there in day 2 with 20%, because again, Amoonguss is still good, right? Even if there is Miraidon, that's okay because you can change terrain with a Rillaboom or a Indeedee swap in, or use Chen-Pao and blow up terrain with Ice Spinner, and again, then that's when you can Spore. And it's still also a pretty good thing to use in Trick Room, right? Because Spore is, with that speed tier, Spore is looking pretty good in that idea. And then you also have healing capabilities with Pollen Puff, right? To get your Shadow Shield back, to also heal your Ursaluna back up to full after all that burn chip damage. You can, it's also a good partner for Lunala, just getting it back to full health, because of Shadow Shield, right? So anyway, not bad, right? Not too surprising, right? Ursaluna functioning as another restricted right now in Regulation I. Iron Hands and these guys are always going to be within the top 6 at the moment. Grimmsnarl stealing the show, right? That's what we're really getting out of this in terms of the day 2 data here. And Raging Bolt is still a very, very good balanced Pokemon. A lot of Raging Bolts were dropped on some teams just because you got another restricted, but it's still very good even with 2 restricteds, just because of some of the balance that it can provide, especially when you have Bolt Beam coverage, with either Chen-Pao, or you have that with the Calyrex Ice Rider for that matter. If you don't have an Iron Hands, then another good bulky strong electric type like a Raging Bolt is looking pretty good here. Okay, so yeah, that's in terms of usage rates for where we are right now. So now let's actually look at some teams. Let's see where some of those day 1 teams finished off into day 2. All right, so let's look at the top 8 results here. So just in terms of the dual restricteds and how many are within this top 8. So you've got 2 you've got 2 Koraidon Calyrex Ice Riders, okay, at number 1 and number 4 there. And they both have the screens variant. And in fact, I think they're both the same build if I'm not mistaken here. And we'll definitely click them in a second. But then we've got Shadow Rider Zamazenta at number 2, another Zamazenta at number 3, but this time with Koraidon and Sneasel. Yeah, that's definitely from the Nielsen brother over there. And Koraidon again making a top 8 cut at number 5 there. And then Swordfish, you had a pretty good turnout and good results here in in Utrecht here. So at number 6 there, right? That's the best variant. And then number 7, number 8, of course, Lunala Koraidon. And then finally, the Shadow Rider and Terapagos there, just like in Milwaukee, also finishing at 8th place over there. So nice, good variants here. So lots of things are very much viable, lots of different partners, which is good because again, the format's still relatively new, right? It's only been a couple of weeks, and this is more or less a Milwaukee carryover. We haven't really centralized our meta yet, hasn't really settled down yet. And I wouldn't expect it to do so for the next, I would still say, a couple weeks. Okay, before we really got to see, okay, like these are the best restricted pairs right now, and this is where everybody else follows after them, right? So we're not really there at that point yet. People are still trying and experimenting different things. But yeah, let's just go ahead and take a look at the teams here. So look at Michael Kelst's team at number 1. And before I even click that, I did see this tweet a couple days ago, right? This is from Kian, but if you close your eyes, right, you got the Celesteela and Calyrex Ice Rider side by side, right? The Clover Bells icon, Celesteela right there. And the question is why? Why did he tweet this? What is the idea? Why does this have 1,000 likes? Because if you look at the moveset here, this is something that we saw with Milwaukee as well. There is a Leech Seed on this Calyrex Ice Rider sets, right? And remember when Celesteela was, even a Pokemon to be played in competitive, right? It's not, in Scarlet and Violet, but when it was in Sword and Shield, and even before that, it was that Leech Seed variant, right? That can always just stay on the field, be annoying, and just wither your HP away until it was in range to get KO'd by something like a Flash Cannon or Air Slash, and then it would get a Beast Boost, right? And you get the same idea here with the Ice Rider, when you can do that too, okay, along with your Glacial Lance, and now start steamrolling, right? And then you also have this endgame with Protect, and now you add screens on top of that. So now there's so much damage mitigation. This thing is not dying. It already wasn't really taking all that much damage because, again, the triple-digit stats all around is strong. But then you add stuff like, again, Grimmsnarl and Incineroar for, reducing the amount of damage that you would take. Now, all of a sudden, your Leech Seed is helping you gain back more health, along with leftovers, than you would have been dealt because there's, the opponent's just not dealing that much damage. So you have this endgame scenario where like Calyrex Ice Rider can sometimes 2v1 the opponent because they're not dealing enough damage, you're just sitting there getting recovery, double recovery from Leech Seed, and then you have leftovers, and then you're sitting behind those screens, and then eventually things get put in range for your Glacial Lance, and then they just die, right? So that's the whole process and thought idea there. And especially if Calyrex Ice Rider, if you can't really kill things, you know, if you know, things like go for that Terra Water idea, and now all of a sudden Glacial Lance is just not really great, this is where Miraidon comes into play. Or you can just always rely on Leech Seed endgames and, you know, just kind of just get all this passive recovery. And then at the same time, what it also does is it forces your opponent to think, okay, I need to switch my Pokemon out, so I don't want to be taking all this Leech Seed damage. But then now all of a sudden you're out of position, and the turn that you take to swap something out to break the Leech Seed, that's just free damage from Calyrex clicking Glacial Lance and something else, maybe like an Urshifu clicking Choice Band Surging Strikes, which, you know, doesn't want to do. So, you know, when the opponent does that, it's just ultimately, you know, they're not dealing damage and you are. So all the more good idea there for the Leech Seed. Nice little tech there that is rising within regulationI. So shout outs to Michael for winning with this. Standard Grimmsnarl set over there. Same thing with this Miraidon here. Nothing really else. I think it's just a bulky Miraidon too. I think these are like these slower, modest variants now that are adding a little bit more bulk. So what we're saying now is, you know, with these Miraidon EVs, and I'll show you some samples later on, but the idea is, look, if I just go 252, 252, I'm just gonna play the speed tie game every single time, and I don't want to do that. All right, so now let's just say, look, I'm gonna forgo the speed. I'm just gonna invest in my bulk. I've got Grimmsnarl and Incineroar anyway, so let me take that damage, right? Even though you get to go first, I'm gonna survive, and then I'm gonna deal damage, right? And I'm gonna win because you don't have damage mitigation and I do. So I'm gonna end up winning that scenario, and that's what's happening with these Miraidon slower, bulkier builds. Then you have Landorus there, again, really good into the mirror. You know, just again, ground typing is really solid right now. Earth Power, strong. Sludge Bomb, again, also really good at removing Rillabooms and the Ogre Ponds. Then you have Taunt, which is kind of funny. You know, you don't need Sandstorm Storm here, so a fast Taunt is pretty cool. And then, you know, just AV Ins in here also, like, really, really strong, especially with Grimmsnarl screens. Like, you know, you have Intimidate and you have Reflect and you have AV. The Incineroar becomes hard to move. So you're just basically dealing chip damage here, knockoff here, U-turn out. Things are down to 40%. That's perfect. Now you're in range of Urshifu, Calyrex Ice Rider, and Miraidon to clean things out here. So you got the defensive backbone with Incin and Grimmsnarl, and now you have the big damage dealers with Urshifu, Miraidon, and Calyrex, and then the Landers can kind of come in and see fit. It's also another pretty good damage dealer. So nice stuff here. This is one of the top cores right now, top teams with this 6 right now. You know, it's not necessarily Michael's team. This has been in use even prior to this. Okay. Now we go into the Shadow Rider Zamazenta balance stuff. This is just, again, classic. Instant Rillaboom, Urshifu, give me an Ogre Pond there, slap my double restricted here, and, you know, just call it a day, right? And it's still pretty good because, again, you got the nasty plot, you got the tools to set it up, you got the double fake out, you got the redirection. That's really all you need. And the Wide Guard will help you into the mirror, right, because of Astral Barrage. So, you know, pretty standard in how it's supposed to play. Then you've got the Nielsen brother over here, which is, you know, he's been doing this quite a bit with the Electric Seed Sneasel. He did this in Regulation G as well. And here we have the return of Blood Moon Ursaluna on this Miraidon core. So you got Ferrigaf there, no Iron Hands because you got a Sneasel here. That's your fighting type coverage, a faster one here. You also got Zamazenta at the same time here. So Gunk Shot Sneasler, right? Much higher base damage than, you know, Dire Claw there. And then you have Terra Dark Throat Chop, which is great into stuff like Lunala and the Calyrex Shadow Rider stuff. And then you get to outspeed them anyway, right? Because you have the Electric Seed you have on Burden. And then, you know, close combat, of course. Good, strong fighting coverage into something like Terrapagos, for example. Tornadus, you know, rain control for the Sun teams, especially those Koraidon matchups. And then, you know, just putting your Zamazenta in the rain makes it take less damage from fire type attacks altogether. And, you know, Trick Room with Blood Moon or Saluna, you don't have to worry about Intimidate cycling here. You know, just click that hard Earth Power, and then just, you know, big chip damage with Blood Moon and Hyper Voice here. All to go, you know, again, the normal ground typing, good into the Calyrex Shadow Rider, good into the Miraidon Iron Hand stuff. So, and you have 2 modes here. You have the Tailwind mode and you have the Trick Room mode there. So, Nice stuff there from Nielsen. Then you've got Alexander Hughes. Again, is this more or less the same team as Mr. Michael? And I think it is. Yep. Okay, so more or less the same kind of squad there. So let's move on here. This one, the Mariah. Look at this. I've been telling you guys this, right? Remember when we released our Ho-Oh Koraidon team rental, right? Remember when we put out all those rentals, okay? And we had this rental, right? And, you know, our buddy Miggle, he used this and he won a Regulation G tournament. I'm going to do a video on that team relatively shortly because, again, it's a really good one. But what's the difference between this team and what Hungyu was doing over here? We both found value in the Dark Urshifu, right? Because we at the time when I was building the squad, I wanted that matchup for the Terapagos Calyrex Shadow Rider stuff, right? Because Urshifu does well into both restricteds. So here we are, we have the same thing. The only difference is they have an Iron Bundle, I have a Grimmsnarl, but everything else is relatively the same. You still got Ho-Oh Terra Grass, you got Iron Hands Fergraph as your core with Koraidon, okay? But you still want that dark typing advantage for Lunalas, the Calyrexes, and the Terapagoses. And that's why I had value the Dark Urshifu over the ground type there, okay? And you can play it that way. So to each their own, but here, more proof that our idea works, okay? So shout outs to Hangyu for doing that. And then you go to 6, 7, and 8 over here. Okay, Swordfish, finally, this was its breakout tour. Didn't really have great results in Milwaukee, but here we have some pretty good results. This is not the only good Swordfish team. We'll take a look at those when we look at some of the other teams here. But Roaring Moon was always like a good partner for Tailwind, right? Or the Iron Jugulus if you did not use Tornadus. Those were 3 good Tailwind partners. And, you know, what you're getting out of Roaring Moon is a Dark type that is good into Lunala and the Shadow Rider, forcing them to Terra. And then at the same time, you have Acrobatics Pressure into, you know, Amoonguss, Rillaboom, the Ogre Pawns. And then, you know, just being able to be annoying on the field and click knockoff especially is also nice, right? Along with your Tailwind. So from here, you don't have Chien-Pao, so, you know, Ice Beam is important here. And the variants that did run Chien-Pao for Gold, they let go of the Ice Beam coverage and instead went for Thunder, just because, again, you know, you still want that Bolt Beam coverage, but you still needed a way to hit the bulky water types. And, you know, Iron Hands will cover for that over here, so you don't need the Thunder there, so you can keep your Ice Beam in that sense. So you still get that Bolt Beam coverage a little bit there. With the Ice Beam and the electric damage, you know, coming from the Iron Hands. And you get a Tricker matchup here, which is nice. And then, look at that. Swords Dance Zacian, that's to outpace the Intimidates coming from Incineroar, because when they drop you to -1 or neutral in this sense, you click Swords Dance, and even if they pivot out, you're still at a plus advantage there. So, yeah, just don't miss your Play Rough. And then Sash Urshifu with Taunt is always, like, pretty solid all in all. So, a nice breakout with Swordfish over here. Okay, this is something that we expected, you know, back in Milwaukee, but it did not fare out too well here. But it fared out well here. Then over here, 7th place here, Lunala, Koraidon here. And Entei is a Rising Fire type, like we mentioned in our Day 1 video. Again, you know, the argument here is you don't need to commit a Ho-Oh restricted slot for Sacred Fire. You get a faster Sacred Fire user in this case, and you get Inner Focus, so you don't need a clear Amulet. Because you can't get Intimidated, can't get Faked Out, you don't need to worry about any of those things, and then you still get ground coverage here with Stomping Tantrum, and you still have a priority Extreme Speed with Terra Normal there, which means you get to ignore other Lunalas and other Calyrex Shadow Riders that are clicking Moongeist Beam and Asher Barrage there, right? So, yeah. Then, of course, Dark Urshifu yet again, along with Iron Hands, really good pairing there. Fake Out and Wicked Blow is strong, and then typical Whimsicott set over there. Also very nice. You know, I like Entei right now. I think it's in a pretty good spot here. So Sacred Fire is very strong, and you know, with Life Orb it's just doing even more damage there. Then as we go here into 8th place here, very standard set. Again, we talked about this earlier. This is just your Encore Disable Shadow Rider with the Pagos, which is ideally right now it's best set when you're doing stuff like this, because you need a way to shut down those fighting moves, you know, into Pagos. So, you know, Encore Disable stuff is really nice. And then when things are encored, they can't really click moves. That's just free Calm Mind setup for Pagos. And then now they have to switch out, which is again another free turn for Calm Mind. And before you know it, this thing is +2, +3, +4. And then, you know, Terra Starstorm plus Astral Barrage is it just goes crazy here. So look, it's just a lot of support here. It's just basically protect the king kind of team. You know, you got the double fake out, the double redirection, the encore disable stuff. So you're the hybrid sweeper, hybrid support there. You know, kind of idea from the Shadow Rider, and then Pagos just becomes your, you know, ultimately the late game cleaner there, right? So good variants, you know, lots of different play styles from some of these teams, right? It's not just all Tailwind, not just all Trick Room. There's lots of balance ideas, balance cores, you know, protect the king idea like we mentioned there. So all in all, we're in a pretty free for all format right now. So lots of things are viable. And then even just besides the top 8, there's lots of other teams that are looking pretty good here. And you can see a lot of Grimmsnarl, right? You know, just a lot more damage mitigation. But we'll look at all these squads now just to see anything that jumps out at us. Because again, you know, 10 threes, 9 threes, 8 threes are still like very, very good teams. Okay, so now let's look at the Kyogre teams here, but specifically even the Swordfish variant, the Zacian Kyogre stuff. So they're kind of using like a similar formula here, where you have the Kyogre, the Zacian, okay, then you have the Urshifu there, you know, for like your faster mode, your breaker damage in the rain, and then after that your Tailwind setter, and then Trick Room matchup, right? That's the ideal formula for a Zacian Kyogre kind of team here, right? So we saw this already from Eric, and then down here, if you look even further, by the way, this is Zamazenta Kyogre, which we'll look at in a second here. But look at this type of idea from Kyogre and Zacian here. So look, there's the formula, right? So here's Kyogre, here's Zacian, here's our Tailwind setter. In this case, it's Iron Jugulus with Snarl, and again, Hurricane. You know, that's just your workaround for wide guard stuff, okay? And then, you know, you have Trick Room matchup, right? With Instant, Ursaluna, and Incineroar, if anything, right? So this is Scarf Ogre, by the way. So you can kind of outpace a lot of different teams. You can outpace the Shadow Rider too. You don't necessarily need the Tailwind now. And then now when you have like stuff like, you know, Scarf or Assault Vest, you get to run Thunder and or Ice Beam or like another water move here. So in this case, you have 3 water moves and Thunder, which is good, okay? And then look, Ursaluna in the Trick Room idea is pretty nice here. But at the same time, you know, you're wondering like, who's sending the Trick Room? You don't need it, okay? You just need to be able to use something in the Trick Room idea, because again, Kyogre, you know, doesn't want to really deal with an Ursaluna. I'm sorry, the Kyogre versus Koraidon, you're kind of weak there. But if you have an Ursaluna, that gives you that matchup, right? And you still have good synergy here with Earthquake partner next to a flying type over here, which is really, really nice. So sometimes you can even run like a faster Ursaluna for that matter if you really want to. But again, Among Us Instant, again, relatively like balanced ideas here with this Zacian Kyogre squad here. So you can play fast, you can play slow. Good synergy among some of these partners here, which is really nice. And then again, you see the Swords Dance Zacian again, just trying to outpace the Intimidate support. I'm sorry, the Intimidate cycling that would come into a Zacian / Ursaluna stuff, right? So I respect this idea from Ryan. Good idea. Then if we look at this one, okay, from Nick Scott, Nick Schroetier 8 and 3. So same kind of concept. Like here's the Tailwind setter, right? In this case, it's Roaring Moon versus Iron Jugulus versus Tornadus. Instant Among Us, you know, defensive backbone, Trick Room matchup like we mentioned. And here's that ground coverage again. And this is the Landorus, right? So instead of Ursaluna, here you have the Landorus. But now you get to run Sandsear Storm. So a little bit more of a faster mode here. But again, still makes sense. Because again, some good synergy here. And you get that nice good ground type into that Koraidon matchup that, you know, you don't really like. And even like Raging Bolt there, Kyogre doesn't really want to deal with that. So Landorus also does well over there. Another Swords Dance Zacian, right? No substitute here, no Sacred Sword needed. And this is AV Kyogre instead of the Scarf. So again, forget this Protect idea. I want Thunder, I want Ice Beam. Give me Water Spout, give me Hydro Pump. Perfect, okay? And you just go from here. So another good idea, another similar formula that you're getting from Swordfish. Okay, then even this one was like so like now we're going into the 7 Forest. This one was like the more standard way to build it. This is like our rental, right? When we put it out there, like the Chenpao Among Us stuff here, Kyogre Zacian, Tornadus Ursh, and then Among Us gives you that Trick Room matchup, right? So Terra Grass, Mystic Water Ogre, and then it's just, you know, Choice Scarf Urshifu with Aqua Jet rather than Coaching. And then Manual Rain Tornadus, right? So this is like the very first beginning builds of Swordfish. You know, sometimes you'll see Incineroar here over the Chenpao slot, but I think Chenpao is just very, very good, especially with Ice Spinner and whatnot. So feel free to also use this variant or use our rental if you really want this type of idea. But again, this was seen in Milwaukee. It did not do well there, but it did well here. And sometimes it's just a matter of the matchup that you draw and the player difference. And, you know, sometimes you need a little bit of luck because one miss makes a difference between 5-3 and 6-2, right? So sometimes you hit your moves and you move into day 2. Sometimes you miss, just like a play rough over here. Sometimes Origin Pulse, and then you just go from 6-2 to 5-3, right? So it just all depends sometimes. But I also want to show this one here from Damani Palmer, right? He's been raving about this on Twitter, like we mentioned in our day 1 video. But Ruination Chen Pao is a pretty cool tech. You break Shadow Shield from Lunala, you break Sash from other mons, and then from there, you put things in range for Kyogre, Zacian, and Urshifu to pick up, right? Anytime you can deal 50% instant damage without having to worry about, you know, damage rolls or whatever, you know, you can just sign yourself up here. This is substitution, by the way. This is going to help a little bit more into the Trick Room matchup, and you can't intimidate the Zacian that's already under substitute, which is really, really nice. But other than that, it's just your classic Swordfish kind of core over there. Then over here, look at this. So another variant that also uses Ursaluna. This one, instead of the instant, we do get the Farigiraf, which again, your Trick Room setter, right? But look at this. This is also your AV Ogre instead of the Choice Scarf variant. This is banned Urshifu. A lot of damage in the range. Choice Specs Miraidon. And all in all, look, you got your Tailwind setter, and then you have the synergy again with the Ursaluna, so this also makes sense. I really like this team. It's actually pretty cool when you think about it. So now this variance in Swordfish looks pretty good here. But and as I say Swordfish, this is like Miraidon and then Kyogre. So a little difference there in the restricted. My apologies, but hey, we were gonna cover it anyway. We might as well get a little head start there. Okay. So yeah, other than that, like those were the Zacian Kyogre variants. So like some of the other ones. So Nick Holmer here at 9th place. This was the yeah, I remember this. This was the unfortunate 1% chance miss. If you missed it on stream, it was very unfortunate. Yeah, triple axle with wide lens, 1% chance to miss, and it missed, and there goes the game 1 there. But Serena, again, that's your anti-priority mon here. You know, you're trying to stop the sucker punches, you're trying to stop the thunderclaps, the grassy glides from the Rillaboom into Kyogre there, and then at the same time deal super effective ice damage right back at them with triple axle, right? Serena is not new to the Kyogre archetype. And then, you know, you have your Iron Hands Miraidon core with your Tailwind setter, and then Urshifu, of course, just does well on either core, especially when you have Tailwind and Rain Dance over here. So another cool way to run Miraidon Kyogre might be its next best partner, along with the Ice Rider Kyogre, which we'll look at in a second. But this one looks like you want Zacian here, but instead it's Zamazenta. So, you know, similar idea, right? Here's Mystic Water, here's my Tailwind setter, right? Trick Room matchup, and here you're just getting Wide Guard support at the same time. And you get a nice little, again, the Steel type and Rain is still like very, very good here, but it's just another way to run a Swordfish. I guess you can call this Shieldfish? No, that doesn't make sense because Swordfish is like a pun when you go into the supermarket and you get a Swordfish, okay? Or you just find a Swordfish in the sea. All right, how about the Ice Rider variants here? So look at this one. It's AV Ogre, more Tailwind. We got Smeargle here with Transform. I remember covering this in week 1 here, so it actually went relatively far. So this is pretty cool here. Fake Out and Spore, right? So double Spore here with Smeargle and Among Us. That's annoying. And then everything else, like, you know who your big damage dealers are. Pollen Puff for your Ogre is important, right? Just to get it back to full HP here. Manual Transform is kind of funny. So yeah, I guess it works. Yeah, to each their own, I guess. And yeah, it's pretty much it. So here again, you kind of see it again here at 75th place, but yeah, that's pretty much the same idea moving forward. So lots of good Kyogre teams now that did relatively well here. So most of them were Swordfish, but they weren't the only ones. So like Miraidon Kyogre did well, and so did Ice Rider, and Kyogre also did well. And then Zamazenta Kyogre, a little bit more niche, but can still also deal relatively well there. So let's see what happens within the next few events or the next few locals, because some of these builds are actually pretty good. All right, how about the Koraidon squads over here? So you can see here that they kind of struggled somewhat but still had some decent results here. The highest placing Koraidon squad was number 41 over here from Eduardo. Okay, and it was your pretty standard Lunala Koraidon squad with, you know, the Chiyu, the Fluttermane, the ground type, and the Ursaluna, and then you have the Brute Bonnet here for the redirection and the Spore Pressure idea, right? So that was, this is again your Milwaukee carryover. So that squad is still doing pretty well right here. But then you had some other stuff here. How about the Wheezing Calyrex Shadow Rider idea with Ability Shield Koraidon? So again, just being able to set up these spikes, but, you know, a little bit of chip damage over time. You can still get your own weather, and then Wheezing takes away everything else. And then, you know, the Chiyu, the Brute Bonnet are still like some familiar ideas. But this is Encore Calyrex with Shadow, with the Focus Sash, and then the Iron Hands here. Again, another Fake Out Mon that can do well within the Trick Room idea. So that's still like pretty strong and solid. Then the Hyper Offensive variants, right, with more Wheezing stuff. By the way, Wheezing did win over at Melbourne over there. So don't underestimate the Wheezing stuff here. So D-Gleam, Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, Protect. Again, more Ability Shield Koraidon. So still a familiar idea that we're seeing here. Okay, but how about Raging Bolts coming in here with the Assault Vest Electro Web support here. And then again, a Sash Calyrex Shadow Rider over there. Still doing like okay. And then, you know, if you look at some of the non-Wheezing stuff here, Alessandro, right? A more of a hyper offense here, but again, the Trick Room matchup. But again, Whimsicott, Koraidon, Shadow Rider, and then the Chiyo. There's your core. Then you add Iron Hands for your Trick Room matchup, along with Brute Bonnet here with the Amoonguss. Iron Hands, again, still looking pretty good into the Ice Rider matchup, because again, that's one of the keys for like some of these Koraidon teams here, especially from like Regulation G. How do you match up with the Ice Rider? You need a way to deal with that, whether it be something like Wide Guard or something that can at least match its speed tier for speed tier and then do big damage into it. And Iron Hands is that Pokemon, especially when you have the Terra Water Iron Hands. Now the high horsepower is neutral, the Glacial Lance is resisted, and then the low kick is doing 50% damage. So Iron Hands are great anti-Calyrex matchup over there. Okay, and then more or less the same thing, but this one is the Instant Amoonguss variant with the Wide Guard Lunala here with leftovers. So still the same kind of concept here, but this is AV Instant, still like doing okay here. And then these two teams over here, I thought these two, you know, this was like one of those Milwaukee archetypes that were like, oh, this is something that wasn't on the radar, but, you know, it ends up doing like relatively well. That is the Ice Rider Koraidon matchup, where again, Brute Bonnet looking pretty good here, and then the Ursaluna also, you know, within Trick Room also looking like relatively strong, and then Raging Bolt here, Bolt Beam coverage, doing well with the Ice Rider and the Koraidon. So this is something that, you know, I also wanted to like build in another team building video, so we get to see it here. Okay, so yeah, again, the Chiyu also like pretty good, you know, against Miraidon and Shadow Rider as well. And I think this is more or less the same team, right? Just the Ogre Pond in place of the Brute Bonnet there, which again still functions relatively the same way. This is Flamethrower Chiyu, by the way. They hate missing overheat, but similar concept there as well. And then we end up over here with the Tinglu Koraidon stuff. Tinglu again also pretty good right now. Again, especially with this Assault Vest Ruination kind of build here. Again, breaking Shadow Shield from like other Lunalas. And then, you know, just being able to support Koraidon over here, just reducing special damage altogether. And then Fluttermane Chiyu is still like a very, very strong core to be had with Koraidon here. And again, more Iron Hands onto this. So you get to see some familiar Iron Hands with these Koraidon teams. Again, it's still like pretty good into the Ice Rider matchup. But overall, not too much Koraidon squads here, you know, in EU, but we'll see what happens moving forward. Okay, so now let's look at the Ice Rider teams, especially the Ice Rider Miraidon squads, which is like the dominant of the Ice Rider teams. So we've already seen Michael Kelser's squad, but again with the Leech Seed, Calyrex behind screens, Alexander pretty much had the same kind of squad. Now if you look here at the fourth best team, right, which was 18th place here from Bart Van Dorm. Okay, similar concept. Again, Leech Seed, Calyrex, screens, but we got Rocky Helmet, Itzin, Urshifu Rapid Strike with the Mystic Water, not a band, and then here is the Ursaluna over here. There's that ground type again. So it looks like almost similar to the Justin Tang, Carson Confer kind of squad here, except there's no Lunala here. Instead, we have a Calyrex, right, which still kind of works out, I guess. But this is, again, a familiar formula that we've seen. Look how much Grimmsnarl screens Miraidon Calyrex there is over here, right? This one is the Volcarona variant, right? With Grimmsnarl, Volcarona. There's no Ditto here. Here's Iron Hands, Urshifu here. So this is still like another pretty good, strong, solid type. This is Citrus Berry, Volcarona. You know, Struggle Bug, Quiver Dance. You know, screen setup with Fake Out Pressure lets you enable the Volcarona a little bit, so this can become the late game win con if necessary. Then you have this one here with the Sinistra, which we've seen before. You know, it's another niche Pokemon that has seen a little bit more play in this format as opposed to the others because of all the pivoting happening in and out, right? When you Volt Switch and you bring in Sinistra, whatever, you can get some recovery over time. It's also really good at protecting Ho-Oh, right? Even though there's no Ho-Oh over here, at the very least, you still get Life Dew, Matcha Gotcha, Shadow Ball, Rage Powder, right? All these like healing moves and redirection support is nice. There's no Trick Room on this. That's because you do have the Ferrograph over here. So you still have this Miraidon, Ferrograph, Iron Hands core being slapped on with Calyrex. That's your core. Now these last two slots just depends on how you want to play the team. And the Sinistra and Iron Valiant is being used here. So you get a Wide Guard user here with coaching. So you don't have to commit a restricted slot here, right? And you still get coaching here, right? So all in all, another way to play the squad. So shout outs to Dill, you know, pretty cool team. Then you go down here, Ibrahim. Okay, similar concept. Again, the Band Ursh, the Grimmsnarl screens, the Leech Seed, Calyrex. Again, very familiar 6 that we've seen already from the higher placing people. This one again is the Volcarona variant from Paul. Again, similar idea. This one is Band Urshifu with coaching. So you get that idea. This is Scarf Miraidon with Snarl and Volt Switch. Snarl and Volt Switch here. And then different Volcarona set here with Will-O-Wisp, Rage Powder, and Overeat. So lots of different ways to play the Volcarona. You can go like half-half, or you can go like supportive there. This one looks like the Ho-Oh core, just with Calyrex instead of Ho-Oh here, but it still functions more or less the same way. You know, again, you still have that 4 Miraidon, Ferrograph, Iron Hands, Calyrex. Give me the last 2, and here we're going with Instant and the Iron Treads here to round it out. So still more or less the same concept. Then this one here, this one is just again straight up the same idea. This is Urshifu coaching, Rocky Helmet Instant. Okay, no Ferrograph here because you've got a bulky Calyrex here just being super aggressive. But all in all, pretty cool results from Miraidon and Calyrex. Again, we've seen the dominance with Grimmsnarl again on these teams. Then some of this other stuff here. We got to see, well, we previewed the Koraidon Calyrex teams already. And then, of course, still the same thing with the Kyogre stuff there. So, yeah, all in all, like, Miraidon Calyrex, very pleasing results here. And moving forward, I think you'll still see like more Grimmsnarl screen stuff. It's just so good right now. And when you add Instant here, it just makes the Leech Seed variant like really, really strong. You know, with the you just don't take damage, right? That's really what it comes down to. You don't take damage when you have Grimmsnarl and Instant here. And then when you have the Leech Seed stuff, you're forcing all this pivoting. And then the Miraidon and the Calyrex, they just kind of clean you up when you're just you're spending so much time trying to get out of that, right? So yeah. All right. So with the Lunala teams, right? I think we're beginning to understand why Ursaluna was a top 5 usage mod as far as like the non-restricted. Look how much Ursaluna there are with the Lunas. Because again, Earthquake and Wide Guard is just broken right now. You get an offensive and a supportive combo in one, right? So if we look at some of the other teams here that we haven't looked at already. So for example, like even this one looks like you're just adding Whimsicott over something like the Grimmsnarl, which I guess you can do because again, now you get a Tailwind aspect to it, which still like kind of makes sense. But all in all, I think just Grimmsnarl looks a little bit better over the Whimsicott. But again, it still works, right? And then after that, then you have some of this other stuff here where you get both the the Rillaboom on the same team as Miraidon. And those were some teams that I was kind of looking at. I was like, okay, I guess you can have dual terrain if it was like a Calm Mind Miraidon. But this one is not. This one is just straight up, you know, choice specs, which I guess is still like okay. But to me, if you're going to run dual terrain, sometimes you have to be a little bit aware of where the setup is coming from. And, you know, as I say this, look, here we go. We got Calm Mind Lunala. All right, bro, I should have saw that coming. All right, yeah. So, yeah, okay, so look at this. So, double fake out, trying to set up the Lunala for Calm Mind. So, this is like a more offensive setup Lunala. No wide guard here, whereas the Koraidon is just like more setup based. I thought the Calm Mind was coming from the Koraidon for a second there, but it's actually just the Lunala there. So, shout out to Adam there. Okay, it just made sense, right? You got Rillaboom and Ensign. There's got to be like some Combine stuff going on over there. How about this one? 8-3 Pascalis. This one is Snarl. Koraidon here. There's the other Combine user. All right, so here we go. So similar idea again, but double fake out, redirection here, plus Spore and fake out, triple fake out actually, right? So this makes sense. So if you want to play Lunala Koraidon like that, you can, right? We've already seen a couple of teams that have been able to do that. How about this one right here? Is this more or less the same kind of idea as Adam? Yeah, it is. All right, so there we go. More Calm Mind Lunala stuff with Koraidon and Rillaboom on the same team. But all in all, I think, you know, the Grimmsnarl duos are still like good with this kind of team. Like, again, you don't see it too much here. There's like mostly Whimsicott, but there is like some Grimmsnarl being used here, like even this one, which we've already seen like multiple times already. But you know, it just really depends. Like, do you want Grimmsnarl? Do you want Whimsicott? And then the team kind of plays a little bit differently. You know, screens versus Tailwind support is what you can go for here. But the cores are more or less the same. So if you want to play like that, you have some familiar cores. We saw this already from Milwaukee. So this is also like a little bit of a carryover in that respect. All right, how about the Shield Dog and the Ghost Horse here? So how many teams did we see? That we actually saw quite a few of them, and a lot of them are also built relatively the same, you know, just more or less this balance concept. But there are a few niche Pokemon here and there that can kind of make all the difference and separate your squad from the mirror. So we've already looked at Louis Marco's team over here, which is basically just a fake out boys redirection Urshifu. That we know already. Then if we look here, Max, somewhat of a similar idea, but now we have the Tailwind aspect with Whimsicott here. So we've got substitute Calyrex Shadow Rider with Life Orb. The Sash is back on the Chenpao with Sucker Punch and Taunt, by the way. No Sacred Sword here. You got the Zamazenta here. So Chenpao still looking pretty good here. Then you add Ogerpon Heart Flame. So there's your physical core. Then you've got Whimsicott here and Calyrex, another core. So you got Fake Tier support here, which is strong with this Calyrex here, along with the Life Orb. And then Raging Bolt here, just kind of filling out this balance Pokemon that you can have on a Tailwind team. And you're getting the Chenpao combination here, that Bolt Beam coverage that we know and love from competitive Pokemon here. Okay, so that's another way that you can kind of play this. Then, how about like Zamazenta and Lunala on one team here, right? 10-3, great result there. How about Pelipper here, you know, giving you weather control and Tailwind support here. And this is, again, more Calm Mind Lunala. So, you know, people are finding ways to play this thing besides just the typical wide guard meter beam variants. But again, if you got Instant and Rillaboom, you might as well just play the Calm Mind Lunala stuff, right? And here we go, Raging Bolts again filling out this slot here. So even though this isn't like Shadow Rider or Zamazenta, like you're still getting that dominant ghost type over here with Lunala in that sense. But back to our regularly scheduled program, Samuel Pereira over here. So Life Orb, Chenpao, Sash, Calyrex, Zamazenta with Tinglu, right, which we've seen before, along with Chenpao. We've seen this trio have success, and I have used Tinglu Zamazenta before. It's great because again, you've got damage reduction physically from, you know, your Dauntless Shield. Now you add the Tinglu Vessel Ruin, where you're just reducing special attack damage. And then look at this, Runation, all that chip damage. Again, like we mentioned before, breaking Shadow Shield is very important. Sand Tomb, being able to trap things and deal, you know, consistent damage, and being able to put things in range for the Calyrex is also very interesting. Again, when you can like Encore lock them with Sand Tomb, that's also like very devastating in that sense. And then Bolt coming in with, again, the balance concept here with Chenpao yet again. How about this one with, I saw it earlier, but we'll get to it in a second. Misha over here, I think this is more or less the same kind of squad here. There we go. Setup, Nasty Plot Calyrex with Spell Tag over here, Heart Flame, and Rillaboom over here with Dark Urshifu. Pretty standard stuff. Then you get this idea with the Indeedee, and you still have Galarian Weezing over here with Poison Gas. So now you're just adding expanding force pressure to your side along with Roaring Moon. This looks like they use like the Dondozo core where you had like Weezing, Calyrex, Indeedee, Roaring Moon, and then you had the Dondozo Tatsugiri, but now you're just adding Zamazenta, another restricted to this, along with Chiyu here. So yeah, it still like kind of makes sense. And then what was even more interesting down here from Oliver, another Oliver, right? Tyranitar. I think they even put out the rental here, which we can, I guess we can feature it later if we get a chance, but Tyranitar does what Tyranitar is supposed to do. You imagine, you know, weather control with sand, you're breaking Sash, you're breaking Shadow Shield, and then you have dark coverage against Lunala and Calyrex Shadow Rider. You have Rock Slide coverage for Ho-Oh stuff, right, which is really, really nice, because Ho-Oh doesn't really want to be in front of a Tyranitar 4 times weakness. And then the rest of the team is like pretty standard here, like with Icy Wind, Taunt, Flutter Mane, a Thunder Wave. So there's your controlled ghost type. This is the offensive ghost type. And then just Ogerpon, Heartflame, Rillaboom stuff. So nice to see T-Tar get a pretty good day 2 result there in a competitive format with Urshifu running around. So usually that thing doesn't do well, you know, when there is an Urshifu. But now we get at least one kind of day 2 result over there. How about this variant with Ditto, Volcarona, Grimmsnarl here? We've seen this before, especially from Joe Ugarte, who has used this 6 before, except I believe they were using like a Lunala in this place over here, but Zamazenta also just works out relatively the same way. Fiery Dance setup, Volcarona kind of still makes sense here. Then this one here with the Tornado stuff, with Chien-Pao Urshifu. Yeah, similar core here. Oh no, wait, this is Miraidon Zamazenta, which is, I guess, still also a pretty good core when you think about it. I can't believe we didn't cover that one. Because again, 7-4 is still like pretty good. So you know what? Let's show some respect here to Julian. Yeah, oh, this is Volt Switch Iron Hands. Oh, there we go. We got double Volt Switch pivoting in and out over here. So that's pretty cool. This is Crunch and Ice Shard Calyrex. I'm sorry, with Chien-Pao and then the Crash here. No Sucker Punch. Interesting choice there. Okay. But all in all, if you look forward down here, still the same way. You got Entei, Chien-Pao stuff, which you've seen before with the Choice Band, the Extreme Speed Terra Normal, big time nuke, put things in range for Calyrex, right? So this is still like an end game win condition, and then the balance from Raging Bolt here with Assault Vest and Electro Web for speed control, and then the Amoonguss for that Trick Room matchup, right? So we see some basically some familiar builds with some interesting ideas. Again, do you want Tailwind or do you want balance? That's really the first question you got to ask when you're building these Shadow Rider Zamazenta teams, because from there, then you can start thinking about stuff like, you know, Indeedee or Roaring Moon Tailwind stuff, maybe besides the Whimsicott, or you can just go full balance and add Volcaronas and Raging Bolts to these cores. How about this one right here with the Clefairy? I can already tell you this is going to be nasty plot. Yeah, there it is. Instant Rillaboom Clefairy, Raging Bolt here. This looks like something like, you know, you just took out a Tailwind user, maybe you took out Mienshao and you added Zamazenta instead, right? This literally looks like you can just take out Mienshao and then just put in Zamazenta. So there's the adaptation for Regulation G into Regulation I over here, and just, you know, going with that regard here. So yeah, makes sense. I love it, but yeah, I mean, this archetype will still like continue to get results and do well. It just all depends on the support that you surround the Shadow Rider Zamazenta core. But all in all, there's some familiar pieces that you can do. You know, it just depends on how you want to play the team. You're still getting some Ho-Oh usage, you know, from Milwaukee carrying over into now. We've already previewed Hung Yu's team over there with the Dark Urshifu, the way we like to play Miraidon Ho-Oh. But now there's still like some other ideas that you can do. Again, you can always just put the ground type variant that we saw already from Milwaukee, right? So this is still, oh, but what's really cool here is the leftovers as opposed to the Clear Amulet. So I guess you can play that and just go with the recovery over time. I like Clear Amulet, that's just me. Then we saw this one. This was like the Annihilate substitution over here. So look at this, Miraidon Ho-Oh screens, right? With Sinisha, yes, we understand. Also Incineroar helping out with the pivoting with Parting Shot. But then you add Annihilate over here. Very interesting, because again, if you want to cycle against Ho-Oh, you're just going to make this ape even stronger. And now you got this +2 Choice Scarf Close Combat coming at you. Otherwise, you can always just click Final Gambit and nuke something and be done with it, right? So that it adds a little bit of a variable to it, right? So cool result there. 9-3, very, very strong. Aurelian over here, another Aurelian. Again, Miraidon, Ho-Oh screens. Okidogi, Blood Moon, Ursaluna, and Fergraph. So we've seen this pair before, right? This was like also from our draft league, right? Fergraph, Ursaluna have been very, very good in any format that they've been allowed. Then you just add the screens and Miraidon here with your restricted. And then Okidogi, another anti-intimidate mon. So we've seen already two. We've seen Annihilate and we've seen Okidogi here. But look at that tech move. Snarl, really nice idea there. And along with the Assault Vest, makes it super hard to remove along with Grimmsnarl here. So Okidogi looking pretty good. Poison Jab, yes. And then of course the ever so strong knockoff and Drain Punch over here for your coverage there. Okay, then you just have the standard stuff here with Iron Trance, and then there's the Ogerpon Wellspring. So we've seen that before already, because again, you want to be able to protect the Trance and the Ho-Oh from Urshifu Rapid Strike, and one way to do that is just add the Ogerpon Wellspring, which can redirect the Surging Strikes. It also redirects the electric moves that want to be able to click into Ho-Oh. You get to at least be neutral to that, and also the ground typing from Iron Trance is a nice pivot into that as well. So yeah, you can also just play it like this. Familiar 6 that we've seen before. Otherwise, this one was a real outlier. Not really like a real outlier, but here we go. More Leechy Calyrex, but this is partnered with Ho-Oh, by the way, which you usually don't see. But hey, I guess it makes sense. But instant Rillaboom, Grimmsnarl, very, very bulky defensive backbone over here with Ho-Oh and Calyrex. You can switch Ho-Oh in and out a lot, especially when you have U-turn, Parting Shot here. Double Parting Shot, U-turn over here, and then hard switching Ho-Oh, and then double Regenerator here. I've always been a fan of Ho-Oh Amoonguss in the past, just because, again, when you pivot in and out, you're just getting so much recovery, right? And then Calyrex is just able to clean up and be the big damage dealer with the Glacial Land stuff. So I think it's pretty cool, for me. And then now I also want to showcase this one a little bit. Now, even though it didn't make a day 2 or whatever, you still have to kind of respect the whole Koraidon teams that were at least attempted. So here's one, right? So like, there we go. Ho-Oh and Koraidon. So where do you go from here? You can have Fluttermane here with speed control with Icy Wind, right? And you also get Tailwind support over here. So you can kind of start the core like that. Then you add Brute Bonnet over here, right? That can, again, help you against the Surging Strikes, Urshifu a little bit. That can help redirect the electric moves, right? Because you have Rage Powder. So you can kind of see that balance, right? And then you add Walking Wake here. Very interesting. But Walking Wake also works here because, again, you got Draco Meteor, Protect, and Snarl. No fourth move. That's cool. You don't need no fourth move. Oh, man. Wait a second. Draco Meteor, Protect, and Snarl. Oh, my goodness. What happened there? Was this a team sheet error? This is Mystic Water, Walking Wake. It must have been like Hydro Steam here. Maybe they wrote Hydro Pump. I don't know. And then they just weren't allowed to use it. But who knows? But look at this Roaring Moon, by the way. This is Earthquake, Terra Ground, Roaring Moon. Partnered next to Ho-Oh, by the way. So you can definitely do that. This is like your Ursaluna idea now. Except you get Tailwind here as well. So double Tailwind idea. I don't know if that's the best way to play this. I think you just need one mon to have Tailwind. But I can kind of see this core with Koraidon, Fluttermane, Brute Bonnet, and Ho-Oh here. I think the other 2 slots are up for grabs here. But I can kind of see the idea with those 4, and maybe you can just build off of that and round the team out with 2 other slots there. So maybe that could be like a future team building video. This one tried Rhydon here, right, with Lightning Rod. Of course, that's to protect from the electric moves all in all. And then at the same time, you have Roar over here. Well, that's pretty cool. And then, again, here we go. Fluttermane here with the speed. Koraidon, Ho-Oh. We don't have a Brute Bonnet. We do get a Raging Bolt here. So that might be another option as well to be able to play, especially if this is Volt Switch partnered with Ho-Oh. That could definitely do something there, but it's still a little unclear what those last 2 slots could be. There's a couple options, I would imagine, but I think you just want a ground type there, right? So you can kind of use those 4 and just add a ground type in that sense. So I guess it kind of makes sense there instead of like Terra Ground, Roaring Moon. But, to each their own over there. Speaking of ground, oh, how about this one? No, we've seen that already. Yeah, I think that was it. I think this one's pretty interesting, though. Like, Lunala, Ho-Oh over here. Again, Sacred Fire, Tailwind, Recover, Brave Bird. Standard set here. Calm Mind, Lunala. the familiar fake out boys with redirection. So I'm not surprised here. I don't know if Ho is the best restricted for this, but they chose it. But here we go. Calm Mind Lunala doing well here. And then you get some other like interesting ideas going down there at 5-3 and then 4-4. But all in all, let's see what happens with Ho-Oh moving forward. I think Ho Miraidon's still like relatively strong. Looks like it's its best partner right now as far as like how you want to use the Ho, because like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 8 teams here have been using Ho-Oh and Miraidon here. But I will at least preview this one with the Eternatus, the Life Orb Eternatus here. So offensive Eternatus and then Tailwind Ho-Oh. I don't know, is that best? You know, we'll have to wait and see. I guess there's like some ground pivot potential here. But again, Miraidon Ho still in a pretty decent spot. All right, so for now, this part of the video, I want to wrap it up here where we get to at least preview a couple of teams that had some interesting niche Pokemon or some interesting ideas that we didn't get to see from the other archetypes that we previewed already. So look at number here at number 11 here. Porygon 2, we kind of previewed this already from like the day 1 video. Calm Mind Pagos here with Instant, P2, and Amoonguss makes sense because again, you can play this relatively slow. You can put things to sleep. You can weaken things with Parting Shot, and then that's going to help you set up these Calm Minds. You have another redirector here with Ogerpon Cornerstone. But all in all, the Calyrex Ice Rider also thrives here under Trick Room. I thought this was also a pretty cool idea in the grand scheme of things here. So 11th place there, 10-3, like strong result there for an otherwise underexplored duo with the Pagos and the Ice Rider there. And as we keep going down here, how about Mr. Jamie Boyd, man? You know, you waited till this part of the video where Clover would preview this team. The highlight, of course, is the Electricity Chestnut over here, right? So what we're saying here is we can run Miraidon and Calyrex Shadow Rider, okay? And we can still get Wyguard onto the team, but not have to commit a restricted slot in the Lunala. So what are we getting here with Miraidon? So Jamie Boyd is saying, look, I'm going to click Discharge, and I've got a couple of Terra Ground types here that I can do that next to. I can do that next to Grimmsnarl. I can do that next to the Shadow Rider. And by the way, the Grimmsnarl, it's got Fake Tears. So, you know, I can always just like Fake Tears, nuke something with Astro Barrage. I can always nuke something with Electro Drift or Draco Meteor, whatever. The point is I can nuke something, right, after the Fake Tear support. And it's not screens, Grimmsnarl. It's basically everything but screens. So it's Fake Out Grim. You got Foul Play there, and you still get Speed Control with Thunder Wave. So you can still play like this. It's AV Blood Moon with Snarl, which is really cool. And then, you know, with the AV, you're just making it even more bulkier. You got Struggle Bug and Quiver Dance Volcarona with leftovers, right? So that can also be like a late game win con. But look at this Shadow Rider set. It's Terra Blast, Terra Ground, and Hex. Okay, Hex, if you can get the status infliction, the Hex is very devastating. Okay, and then at the same time, look, you've got Wyguard here on the Chestnut, and you've got Body Press here, right? Which is, again, when you get that C boost, and you already got a pretty good defense stat, now you're just going for these, the Body Press is pretty strong there. You got your Wyguard support still to help you out with the Mirrors and the Glacial Lances, and then you still get Leech Seed on top of that. So you don't need an Ice Rider, you don't need a Zamazenta, you don't need a Lunala, you get all of that in one. You know, you can get that Wyguard, Body Press, and the Leech Seed all in one Pokemon, and that is what Jamie Boyd is doing here. Wow, that's very creative. I gotta respect that. Yeah, so 8-3, great job there. Scrolling down here to 36th place. How about this one? This is also like a pretty interesting idea from Adrian. This is a Zacian Groudon here with the Jump Bluff, Tailwind support, Chlorophyll, of course. You know, doubling your speed in the sun there. But nice to see Groudon at least get a day 2 result. Again, there was another Groudon team, which we'll look at in a second, but Jump Bluff, Walking Away, Chiyu, all very familiar and pieces that make sense here. I don't know if Zacian is the correct restricted here, but again, you need something for the Ice Rider matchup because that's something that Groudon and Koraidon struggle with, and the Zacian can help you do that and pressure with the Behemoth Blade there, and so can the Chiyu in that sense, right? So I respect it. Then as you scroll further down, you'll find another Groudon team over here at 51st place. It's Groudon Miraidon. Okay, another pairing that maybe people will try, maybe for like YouTube, but here we go. We see it get a a pretty decent result over here, right? 8-3, very strong. But look what we're doing here. It's Clear Amulet, Groudon. And again, Dawn is pretty slow. So you can definitely set up Trick Room here with Ferrigaf and Iron Hands and Incin. And then after that, you can just add something like a Volcarona over here, I guess. I think you can get something else besides like a double fire type here, but it's still like pretty good, right? So, you know, Groudon, you know, with Miraidon, yes. And again, it's a ground type, so it's going to help you in the mirror matchup too against other Miraidon and Iron Hands teams. So perhaps Groudon can get a little bit more exploration later on. But again, what do you do with the Ice Rider matchup? Because these are both weak to Glacial Lance. You don't have any White Guard here. You do have an Iron Hands, Incin, and Ferrigaf there, especially with Terra Water. So I guess it can work, right? So to me, maybe you find a White Guard user, but again, this is still like okay. I think it still like makes sense. So if you care to try Groudon, Miraidon, there's your build right there. Then I also want to move down and shout out like another couple of some of these other 5-3 teams here that we did that we don't really get to always show enough love to. But again, one more win away from day 2. But how about this team right here at 116th place over here? I was previewing this earlier, which is also like pretty cool here. Yeah, Sebastian, there's a Cresselia, man. Like, look at this. It's Grimmsnarl on the team, right? Incin and Mungus. So defensive backbone. Then you've got Pagos here with Calm Mind. And then Cresselia here clicking Lunar Blessing and Thunder Wave and Trick Room. So, and then Zacian here is just like your big damage deal. Like, this team doesn't do damage in the beginning, right? You're just trying to enable the Pagos. You've got your screens. You got Lunar Blessing to keep it healthy, right? For the Terrapagos there. I understand it. And Levitate is pretty cool, right? Because again, Levitate alone, if this was like Terra Water or Terra Fire, you can't, you basically wall out the Calyrex, right? And you just chip it away. It can't really beat you because you have healing and you have chip damage over time. And Zacian Swords Dance, that's one way to ramp it up a little bit. But speaking of Levitate, and we're going to cover this in the next video because it did relatively well there. And that is the Giratina Origin, man. Like, we saw what this thing could do a little bit in Reg G just because of Terra Fire and Levitate, like I just mentioned. The Calyrex can't hit it. And now you add Shadow Sneak, Poltergeist, you know, just priority moves with Chenpao. It's doing a lot of damage. It's super bulky anyway. And, you know, other fighting types can't hit this either, right? Because you are a ghost type. So how is Koraidon supposed to hit this thing, right? Imagine this. Look, you can't click that fire move. Your dragon typing resists that anyway. You can't click a fighting move anyway. You're a ghost type. So not only do you wall out Ice Rider, you actually wall out the Koraidon too, you know, even with your Terra Fire here. So I think it's pretty cool when you can do that. And then you add Chenpao just to help it do a little bit more damage. Pelipper, Landorus, Zamazenta, Mungus. That's a relatively standard Regulation G core. And it kind of works out here, you know, just because of what you can do. And again, Pelipper gives you Wide Guard support. So if you're still worried about Glacial Lance, Zamazenta, Pelipper still works out here. So yet again, we find another ghost type that can be paired with this fighting type here. So again, this part of the video, we're preluding to Giratina in the next video. So stay tuned for our Melbourne coverage. But yeah, overall, I think what we learned a few things. Grimmsnarl is very, very good. And Incin, Grimmsnarl, Iron Hands are here to stay. Okay, Swordfish finally picked up and found its footing. It found some pretty good builds that can make its way here. The Koraidon stuff is still pretty good, even though the highest placing team was 41st place. But Miraidon stuff, still strong. Whether it's Lunala Miraidon or Miraidon Calyrex Ice Rider, very good. And the Shadow Rider teams are, you know, right now they're just experimenting with the balance stuff. But, you know, sooner or later, they're going to find their footing as well. And the Pagos Shadow Rider teams are still like, okay, even right now. But yeah, anyway, let me know what you thought of Utrecht. And again, if you still need help building your own team, if you got your own, you know, tournament to go to, if you need something for ladder play, make sure you sign up for coaching on the channel. Tier 3 sub gets you a team building session one-on-one with me via Discord. So once you do sign up there, you can join the Discord, which again has over 1,200 members. But that's free. You don't need to join the Tier 3 just to join the Discord. The Discord's always going to be free. But if you want that team building session, sign up and then message me on Discord and we can plan a time to meet and get you a squad that you need to be able to do well in Regulation I. All right, but that's it for now, folks. We'll be back with another video in the next one. Peace out and have a good one.